The story follows Jefferson Hope, Lucy, and her father as they embark on a perilous escape through a treacherous mountain range in an attempt to elude their relentless adversaries. Their journey begins under the cover of darkness, with the trio navigating rugged, uneven trails and complex defiles. Although they occasionally lose their way, Hope's intimate knowledge of the region enables them to stay on course. At dawn, they find themselves surrounded by an awe-inspiring yet forbidding landscape, marked by towering, snow-capped peaks and steep, rocky banks. The valley below is strewn with debris from past rockslides, fallen trees, and boulders that serve as stark reminders of the dangers they face. The precariousness of their situation is driven home when a massive rock tumbles down without warning, startling the already fatigued horses and reinforcing the ever-present threat of the terrain. As the sun rises higher, its light transforms the peaks into glowing, fiery hues, a sight that momentarily lifts the spirits of the fugitives and renews their resolve. They take a brief pause by a rushing mountain torrent to water the horses and eat a quick meal, though Lucy and her father long for a longer break. Hope, however, urges them to press on, emphasizing the need for speed to ensure their safety. By the end of the day, they estimate they have traveled over 30 miles, putting what they hope is a significant distance between themselves and their pursuers. That night, they find refuge at the base of a crag whose rocky outcrop provides some protection against the biting wind. Huddled together for warmth, they manage to snatch a few hours of sleep before resuming their flight at daybreak. The lack of any visible pursuers gives Hope a cautious sense of optimism, leading him to believe they may have successfully eluded their enemies. However, their challenges are far from over. On the second day, their dwindling food supplies become a pressing concern, prompting Hope to rely on his hunting skills to secure provisions. Leaving Lucy and her father in a sheltered spot near a fire, he sets off into the wilderness with his rifle, confident in his ability to find game. Hope's search proves difficult at first, as he roams through remote ravines and rugged terrain without any success. Signs of wildlife, such as bear claw marks, suggest the presence of animals nearby, but he finds no prey. After hours of fruitless searching, he finally spots a bighorn sheep perched high on a rocky pinnacle. With careful aim, he fires his rifle and successfully brings the animal down. Unable to carry the entire carcass, he cuts away a portion of the meat to bring back to his companions. However, in his eagerness, Hope has wandered into unfamiliar terrain. As night falls, he realizes he is lost. The valleys and ravines around him appear indistinguishable, each path leading him further into confusion. The encroaching darkness and the looming cliffs add to the difficulty of navigating his way back. Despite the disorientation and growing fatigue, Hope presses forward, determined to find his way to Lucy and her father. Finally, he stumbles upon a defile he recognizes, though the absence of moonlight and heavy shadows make the journey slow and hazardous. Burdened by the weight of the meat and exhausted from his exertions, he continues onward, driven by the thought of reuniting with his companions. With every step he draws closer to them, clinging to the hope that the provisions he carries will sustain them as they continue their arduous and uncertain escape. Jefferson Hope arrived at the pass where he had left his companions, recognizing the cliffs even in the dark. After being absent for nearly 5 hours, he expected to find them waiting anxiously. Overcome with relief and eagerness, he called out loudly, his voice echoing through the silent ravines. But no reply came. Unease crept in as he called again, louder this time, but the silence persisted. A chilling dread began to settle over him, and he rushed forward, dropping the provisions he had carried in his growing distress. At the campsite he found only the glowing remnants of the fire, left untended since his departure. The oppressive silence around him confirmed his fears. There was no sign of life. The companions and animals were gone. Stunned and disoriented, Jefferson leaned on his rifle, shaken to the core by the realization that something terrible had happened in his absence. Regaining his composure, he used a piece of wood to rekindle the flames and illuminate the scene. As he examined the area, he discovered the ground was heavily trampled with hoofprints, clear evidence of a large group of mounted men who had arrived and departed toward Salt Lake City. For a moment, Jefferson clung to the hope that his companions had been taken alive. That hope quickly evaporated when he noticed a mound of reddish soil nearby a freshly dug grave. Approaching it, he saw a stick planted in the mound with a piece of paper affixed to it. The inscription read, "John Ferrier, formerly of Salt Lake City, died August 4, 1860. The grave confirmed his worst fears. John Ferrier, alive and well, just hours before, was now dead. Frantically, Jefferson searched the area, looking for a second grave, terrified that Lucy might have met the same fate. Finding none, he realized with grim certainty that she had been taken back to Salt Lake City. Her captors had succeeded in their original plan. She would be forced to marry the eldest son. The thought of her capture and his powerlessness to stop it filled Jefferson with despair. For a fleeting moment, he wished to trade places with Ferrier and lie beside him in death. But despair gave way to resolve. With Lucy beyond his reach, Jefferson resolved to avenge her and Ferrier instead. His grief fueled his determination to seek retribution for the wrongs committed by their pursuers. Drawing on his endurance and strength of will, Jefferson vowed to devote his life to this purpose. Standing by the abandoned campfire, he made a solemn commitment to justice, his anger and sorrow hardening into a singular focus. Retrieving the provisions he had dropped earlier, Jefferson prepared enough food to sustain him for days. Despite his exhaustion, he began the arduous journey back through the mountains, retracing the rugged terrain on foot. For 5 days, he pressed forward, enduring physical fatigue and sleeping only briefly among the rocks, each night before continuing his pursuit. On the 6th day, he reached Eagle Canyon, the starting point of their ill-fated flight. From this vantage, he looked down upon the sprawling city of Salt Lake, its streets quiet and distant below. Though worn and weary, Jefferson remained resolute. He shook his fist in anger at the city, his fury directed at the people who had destroyed the lives of those he cared about. As he watched, he noticed signs of celebration flags and decorations adorning the streets below. While contemplating the reason for the festivities, the sound of nearby hoofbeats broke his concentration. A rider approached, and Jefferson recognized him as Cowper, a Mormon he had aided on previous occasions. Hoping to learn more about Lucy's fate, Jefferson intercepted Cowper and revealed his identity. Initially startled by Jefferson's ragged and unkempt appearance, Cowper eventually recognized him. But his astonishment quickly turned to alarm. He warned Jefferson of the grave danger he faced by returning to the territory. Jefferson Hope, consumed by a need to uncover Lucy Ferrier's fate, confronts Cowper, a Mormon, and pleads for answers. Reluctantly, Cowper reveals that Lucy was forced into marriage with Enoch Drebber after a power struggle between Drebber and Joseph Stangerson. Drebber's faction, being stronger, secured the prophet's support, and Lucy was handed over to him. The murder of her father, John Ferrier, coupled with the forced marriage, crushed Lucy's spirit, and within a month she succumbed to her grief. Drebber, who had valued her primarily for her late father's property, showed little emotion at her death, though his other wives mourned Lucy deeply. During the vigil before Lucy's burial, Jefferson Hope makes a sudden and startling entrance. Weathered and ragged, he strides into the room where Lucy's body lies, ignoring the frightened and astonished women present. Without a word to anyone, he approaches Lucy's lifeless form, presses a kiss to her cold forehead, and removes the wedding ring from her finger, declaring that she will not be buried with it. Before anyone can act, Hope vanishes into the night. The missing ring serves as undeniable evidence of the strange and brief encounter. After this dramatic act, Hope retreats to the mountains, driven by an all-consuming desire for vengeance against Drebber and Stangerson. Tales begin to circulate of a mysterious figure lurking in the wilderness, and both men find themselves targeted by life-threatening incidents. Stangerson narrowly avoids being struck by a bullet that shatters his window, while Drebber escapes death when a massive boulder crashes near him. Alarmed by these close calls, the two men take extensive precautions, traveling with guards and avoiding solitude. Over time, as the attacks cease, they begin to believe that Hope has abandoned his vendetta. In truth, Hope's resolve remains as fierce as ever. However, the harsh conditions of mountain life and the lack of proper sustenance take a toll on his health. Recognizing that survival is essential to achieving his revenge, Hope reluctantly leaves the mountains and travels to the Nevada mines. There, he works to rebuild his strength and accumulate the resources he needs to sustain his mission. Though he originally intends to return within a year, unforeseen circumstances extend his stay to nearly 5 years. Despite the passage of time, Hope's determination remains unshaken. Disguised and using an alias, he finally returns to Salt Lake City, prepared to resume his relentless pursuit of justice. Jefferson Hope's mission for justice began amidst turmoil within the Chosen People, a religious community disrupted by a rebellion among its younger members against the elders' authority. This insurrection led to the departure of several individuals, including Enoch Drebber and Joseph Stangerson, who renounced their faith, left Utah, and became Gentiles. Rumors circulated that Drebber had converted much of his property into wealth, departing as a rich man, while Stangerson had little in comparison. However, their precise whereabouts were unknown, making Hope's pursuit a daunting challenge. Despite the difficulties, Hope's determination remained unshaken. With limited resources, he embarked on an unyielding quest across the United States, driven by a consuming desire for revenge. As years passed, the pursuit took its toll on him. His black hair turned gray, but his focus and resolve stayed steadfast. Finally, his perseverance paid off when he spotted a familiar face through a window in Cleveland, Ohio. This fleeting glimpse confirmed that Drebber and Stangerson were in the city. Hope returned to his modest lodgings, meticulously planning his next steps. However, Drebber also caught sight of Hope on the street and recognized the threat in his expression. Alarmed, he and Stangerson, now acting as Drebber's secretary, sought the protection of a local justice of the peace. They claimed that Hope's jealousy and hatred made him a danger to their lives. Acting on their plea, authorities arrested Hope that evening. Unable to secure bail, he was detained for several weeks. By the time of his release, he found that Drebber and Stangerson had disappeared, leaving their home abandoned. It was later discovered that they had fled to Europe, forcing Hope to restart his pursuit anew. Without the means for immediate travel, Hope resumed work, taking on various jobs and saving every dollar for the next leg of his journey. Once he had gathered enough funds, he set out for Europe, where his chase continued. From St. Petersburg to Paris and then to Copenhagen, he followed their trail, always arriving just after they had moved on. His relentless pursuit finally brought him to London, where, at long last, he succeeded in locating the men he had been chasing for years. The details of what transpired in London are recounted in Jefferson Hope's own words, as preserved in Dr. E. Watson's journal, offering a vivid and first-hand account of the dramatic conclusion to his pursuit.